You think it's over just because I'm dead? It's not over. The games have just begun. Will you learn how to let go?
Eric is still out there, man.
It's time to let go. Game over.
Saw 4 opens the franchise's next chapter with a production history as twisted as its traps, shaped by major script revisions and reshoots that could have sent Jigsaw's story and the fate of several victims in a completely different direction. Despite all the changes behind the scenes, the movie leans heavily on practical effects, from the construction of its traps to the clever set-to-set transitions that create smooth, continuous shots and keep the film grounded in a gritty, physical world. And while it didn't earn the same critical praise as earlier entries, Saw 4 still proved the franchise's unstoppable momentum by becoming the third most commercially successful film in the entire series, showing that audiences were more than ready to dive deeper into Jigsaw's expanding legacy. In this video, we're exploring the behind-the-scenes details, the script revisions and reshoots, and what could have been for this installment of Saw. So without further ado, let's dive in. The filmmakers created those smooth scene-to-scene transitions using practical tricks instead of digital effects, and the way they pulled it off was surprisingly clever. The production team actually built the sets so that two completely different scenes physically connected to each other, allowing the camera to move from one moment in the story to another without cutting. Because the sets were designed like puzzle pieces that fit together, the crew could film what looked like a seamless shift in time or location all in a single uninterrupted shot, making the transitions feel more immersive and giving the movie its signature continuous nightmare style. One example of this is the hospital to interrogation transition with Jill. Betsy Russell wore the exact same outfit in both scenes, and the two sets were built right next to each other so the camera could pan from the hospital mirror straight into the interrogation room with Agent Strom. For the transition to look smooth and continuous, Betsy had to literally sprint from one set to the other the moment the camera moved, landing in position just in time for the shot to continue without a cut. This simple but precise setup made the scene feel like one seamless moment, even though it required quick timing and coordination behind the scenes. The opening autopsy scene ended up being one of the most shocking moments in the series, yet it was passed completely uncut by the MPAA, which is unusual for something so graphic. To make sure everything looked medically accurate rather than exaggerated, the filmmakers kept a real coroner on set at all times, guiding the effects team through each step. The scene was also deliberately made more gruesome than autopsies shown on TV shows like CSI, because the creators wanted to make it clear that Saw operated on a much harsher, more visceral level. Interestingly, this entire sequence was originally meant to appear at the end of Saw 3, but it was moved to the start of Saw 4 to give the film a bold, unforgettable opening. To pull it off, the effects team spent 2 full weeks constructing a detailed body cast of Tobin Bell, which allowed them to film the autopsy with realistic precision and without relying on digital effects. The filmmakers came up with several different ideas for the movie's first trap, but many of them never made it past the planning stage. Early concepts included a trap that would pull both victims upward, creating a more vertical, suspended struggle, and another idea where the characters would be trapped in a room that slowly filled with water, forcing them to fight for survival as the space flooded. However, both of these versions were ultimately scrapped because they were too expensive and too difficult to film, especially within the tight schedule and practical limitations the production faced. The team eventually settled on the mausoleum trap. Although the knife chair trap looks brutally real, the effect was created using practical methods, as the knives were built from wood, then painted and textured to look like sharp metal so the actor wouldn't be in any danger during filming. To make it appear as though these wooden knives were slicing into Cecil's face, the makeup team applied bleeding prosthetics that released fake blood at the right moments, creating the illusion of the knives cutting into his skin. Director Darren Lynn Bousman added several personal touches into the film. In the scene where Ivan is tested, the disturbing photos of rape victims on the walls weren't random images, but pictures of Bousman's girlfriend, his assistant, and his lawyer, who agreed to pose for the production. The film also includes 2 more cameos from Bousman's life. The little girl Rig talks to is Allison Luther, Bousman's niece, and the dog Ivan hugs and kisses is Chance, Bousman's own dog, whom he adopted after finishing Saw 2. In the movie, Riggs' wife Tracy ends up with a much smaller role than originally planned because major script revisions changed her entire storyline. In the finished film, she simply leaves their home and is never seen or heard from again, leaving it ambiguous whether she was kidnapped or just gone, even though the story hints she might have been another victim. Early drafts, however, gave her a much bigger part. She was one of the targets in the game and would have been suspended above the ice block trap, serving as Riggs' emotional motivation to push through each test. But once Donnie Wahlberg was able to return as Eric Matthews, the trap was rewritten to feature him instead, and Tracy was removed from the game entirely. As a result, her screen time was heavily reduced. Interestingly, Athena Karkanis originally auditioned to play Tracy, but she was instead cast as Agent Perez, giving her a more substantial role in the story. The flashbacks to Jill's rehab clinic include some clever continuity nods because several future Jigsaw victims are quietly shown as patients long before their traps happen. Among them is Paul, the man from the razor wire maze in Saw, Donnie, who was Amanda Young's cellmate in the first film, and Gus and Allison, both of whom appeared in the nerve gas house in Saw 2. And the nurse who takes Jill into her care during her miscarriage is Deborah, the same person who gave Lynn Denlon a stern reprimand in Saw 3. These background cameos were intentionally placed to subtly connect the earlier movies and their characters together in a way that rewards fans who pay close attention. In the earliest version of the script, the writers explored a completely different angle on John Kramer's past, imagining him as a child who survived a home invasion in which a burglar broke into his house and murdered his parents, shaping the darkness that would later define him. This idea was eventually dropped as the franchise moved in a different direction, but the unused storyline didn't go to waste. Its core concept inspired Marcus Dunstan's later film, The Collector, which centers on a criminal breaking into a home and terrorizing the people inside. So even though this version of John's backstory never made it into Saw 4, it lived on as the foundation for an entirely new horror movie. In the director's commentary, Darren Lynn Bousman and Lyric Bent revealed that they originally planned a very different ending in which Rigg finally understands the lesson of his game and chooses not to go through the final door, proving he has learned to stop trying to save everyone. Even with Rigg making the right choice, Detective Matthews would still die because he fails his own test of saving himself. After this, Hoffman would reveal himself to Rigg as Jigsaw's secret apprentice and then leave him behind. The twist came when Agent Strom arrived, finding Rigg armed, traumatized, and surrounded by carnage. Believing Rigg must be Jigsaw's new apprentice, Strom would have no choice but to shoot him. This entire alternate ending was actually scheduled and prepared for filming, but when the producers discovered it, they forced Bousman to abandon it and stick to the scripted ending instead. In the making of the Mausoleum Trap, the filmmakers relied on practical effects that forced the actors to experience parts of the trap almost exactly as the characters would. Both performers wore prosthetic thread to make it look like their mouths and eyes were painfully stitched shut. But the effects worked differently for each actor. Louis Ferreira truly couldn't speak during filming because the prosthetic thread restricted his mouth enough to stop him from talking, while Kevin Rushton could actually see since his eye stitching effect was designed to look real without blocking his vision. Saw 4 marked a big behind-the-scenes shift because it was the first entry not written by series co-creator Lee Wannell, and the third one directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who had already become the franchise's main stylist. Instead, the script was taken over by Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan, and this movie became their first of 4 consecutive Saw films. When they were interviewed for the job, they discovered there was supposedly a Saw Bible, which is a guide of rules and continuity they were expected to follow. But because no one had actually given it to them, they had already planned out an entire multi-film storyline based purely on their own ideas. Luckily, the studio loved their pitch, and despite never seeing the rulebook, they were hired and went on to shape the direction of the franchise for years. And this concludes our deep dive into Saw 4, a film packed with chaotic rewrites, bold practical effects, and a surprisingly intricate expansion of Jigsaw's legacy that becomes even more fascinating the closer you look. So if you enjoyed breaking down the twists, production secrets, and hidden layers behind this chapter of the franchise, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future Saw explorations and upcoming horror deep dives. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay sharp, and we'll see you in the next video.